Thanks, Emily. It's been exactly 1 month since we began this two-part Utilities 101 series with a panel of experts on electric power. Today's focus is on natural gas and other gas-based energy sources relevant to today's businesses and industries. Like electricity, the safe, reliable, and affordable transmission and distribution of these sources impact the competitive posture of companies, communities, and states. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Ryan Nance with North Carolina's Electric Cooperatives based here in Raleigh. Along with Josh Hollings, I co-chair the Professional Development Committee and have the honor of welcoming everybody and moderating today's panel. As we often do at NCEDA, we certainly take the moment here to thank our annual sponsors. Without their generosity, professional development offerings like this just wouldn't be possible. Emily, she's scrolling through now the names and logos of these distinguished organizations across your screens. We want them to know, and all of you to know, how grateful we are for their continued confidence and support. Like I said last time, guys, national surveys of location consultants and corporate real estate professionals routinely rank utility costs high on the list as top location factors. Many projects, utility costs and capacity can make or break a deal. So joining us today are 4 experts drawn from the ranks of our state's utility providers: Dominion, Diversified Energy, and Piedmont Natural Gas. Going to do some quick intros, and we'll start with Kurt Bailey. He's CEO of Diversified Energy, a propane gas retailer that operates in 10 markets in the eastern United States. His duties include executive operations management, policy development, market development, product procurement, and more. Kurt has been working in the propane industry for over 3 decades in various managerial capacities. In his current role at Diversified Energy, Kurt is focused on customer service, expanded market share, and creating a solid annual return for the EMC ownership. Next up, we're going to have the dynamic duo from Piedmont Natural Gas, and we'll start with Jason Briggs, serves as manager, large account management at Piedmont, a wholly owned subsidiary of Duke Energy Corporation. Jason has been with Piedmont since 1994, currently works out of Piedmont's Hickory office, and serves as a gas accounts manager and supervisor of major and key account services. Joining him is Jazz Tunnell, serves as manager of large account management at P&G, a wholly owned subsidiary of Duke, as you guys know. In this capacity, he leads a team of innovative and highly skilled gas major accounts managers, and their primary function includes providing premium customer service for the company's largest and most complex industrial natural gas customers, located throughout both the Carolinas, North and South. Prior to this position, Jazz worked at Duke Energy's Government Affairs Department as a state government affairs director. And last but not least, Lee McElrath serves as manager at Dominion, gas operations, key accounts, and commercial services for Dominion's North Carolina gas division. He is responsible for activities with industrial and commercial customers, economic development, and CNG business sectors across North Carolina's service area. Lee began his career with PSNC Energy in 1985 in technical services and has served in various roles since that time. Want to welcome all 4 of you guys, and on behalf of NCEDA's Professional Development Committee, really thank you for sharing your expertise with our members here. I'm going to remind the audience, you guys know we've got the Q&A, the chat box. You got questions, pop them in there. If we have time towards the end, we'll get to those. If we run over time and we don't, just like last time, Liz will pop the email that'll summarize the panelist response to your questions if we didn't get to them. But we're going to keep an eye on time today, guys, and similar to last time, but a little bit different format. We are going to go into kind of a 101 on propane and natural gas. We won't be too much death by PowerPoint, but we get in the panel discussions. We'll be flipping back and forth between some good visuals that P&G's provided, maps, and other graphics that can kind of spice this up and have a little bit more of a dynamic flow as we go through the hour. So with that said, I'd like to start out with Kurt and really get into kind of a 101 of propane. And some of you guys might be asking, you thinking this may have been just mostly about natural gas. Kurt, Kurt started sharing information with me, and the first thing that popped up that I just did not know is North Carolina is #2 in the United States in propane consumption. We love high rankings, but there's probably some good and some maybe bad to that. And but all of you guys know there's industrial sites and buildings across the state that either have limited access to natural gas or no access at all, or at least economically infeasible access. So Kirk's going to take about 5 minutes, walk through some basics with us, and really kind of get us up to speed on the importance of natural gas for business and industry across our state. So Kurt, you want to hop in here and take it away?
There we go. Well, thank you for the opportunity, and we welcome the chance to address this fine group this afternoon. Diversified Energy is owned by 18 electric co-ops based in North Carolina, and currently ranked in the top 40 nationwide as a propane retailer. Our primary area of focus operationally in North Carolina is Central and Eastern. We go about as far as Winston-Salem, North Carolina on the western edge, and pretty much in most of the larger markets on the central and eastern part of the state. And then we do jump up to Pennsylvania, Hershey area, Lancaster, York, Harrisburg, basically that market in Pennsylvania, have a large operation there. And then one outlier operation in the Finger Lake region of New York State, Auburn, near about 20 miles west of Syracuse. Slide 2, please. As Ryan mentioned, #2, if you can read those small numbers on that national map. #1 is my home state, actually, in Michigan. And it's pretty evident when you're in Michigan, if you're riding around outside the natural gas lines, pretty much every house has an above ground large tank up there to accommodate that cold climate. But in North Carolina, a lot of underground tanks, so it'd be surprising for some folks to see how many people actually use propane in North Carolina. The supply source is the Apex pipeline, so there's adequate supply. Unlike the Northeast, natural gas is not quite as prevalent, so the #2 ranking. There's a very strong agricultural use in North Carolina. Historically, tobacco curing, some of that is waning, but we also are picking up a considerable amount of poultry houses and hog farms as well, all requiring quite a bit of heat and energy to raise those animals. So yeah, #2 was quite a surprise. It bodes well for diversified energy. Slide #3 for us, I guess as it relates to the economic development group listening here, a large portion of that pie is chemical and industrial, meaning large gas systems. And about 10 years ago, Diversified Energy still owned and operated a construction division where we went on site and could engineer and construct any size of bulk plant for any application, really all over the East Coast. We've left that business for now, but we still have the in-house capability of consultation and lining up a third party for installing these very important systems. Natural gas and propane have a lot of similar characteristics, and much of the industrial equipment can be modified or changed on site to accommodate either fuel. So propane often is a bridging application as development area may be waiting for a natural gas line to approach the area. Lucky for us, some of those have been waiting a decade or more, and we've continued to provide propane energy service to a large share of factories. Once the system is set up on the larger side for an industrial site or a factory, various tank sizes do apply. 1,000-gallon tank, 15,000, 18,000, 30, even 90,000-gallon tanks are available for storage. And we can also add vaporization equipment if more flow is needed for a very large application. As I mentioned, they are interchangeable somewhat by air mixture systems or changing orifice sizes. Not going to get too technical on that, but as I mentioned, even after natural gas comes to a certain area, many large companies will elect to keep propane as a backup for peak shaving. They are interchangeable to that level. So on the smaller pieces of the pie, residential, commercial, it really is the versatility of the fuel, propane, that makes it desirable and long lasting. Hotels, heat pools, kitchens, restaurants, fire pits. At the homes, of course, we have gas furnaces and water heaters, and just a wide range of products that burn propane safely in their homes and businesses. So next slide, please. This slide kind of tells the tale why propane is usable as a backup to natural gas or other fuels. If I was to take a liquid container of 1 gallon of propane in my hand and drop it and shatter it on the ground, which I don't want to do, it would expand 270 times into vapor space. So that makes it very portable, either by rail, a large ship, transport truck, a lot of firepower. And most people are accustomed to that now through the use of a propane grill at their home. Many people marvel at just how long that little tank can keep on providing vapor for their system. So we do transport the propane as a liquid. As it's being used, it does turn to a vapor. And as I mentioned, a lot of firepower per liquid gallon. Next slide, please. And then lastly, I talked about the relationship to propane and natural gas, starting on the blue lines, kind of where it comes from. Gas processing or oil wells, you do find both of these products in the mix of wet gases. And from there, it's either refined or put into storage. Where the red line picks up, pipeline terminal, for us, it's out in Bellevue, and it comes all the way across the southern tier into Apex, as I already mentioned. I think that's probably why North Carolina has thrived in the propane world. We've had a very consistent supply for a number of years. So we pick it up from there with our own 10,000 gallon trucks and take it directly to the factory or the industrial site, or we come to our own bulk plant and go to a smaller truck to go to homes and commercial. So that's pretty much how propane ties into supplying energy in North Carolina.
Oh, thanks, Kurt. We're going to get into more questions on that. You talk about how long that tank lasts for your grill. That is if you remember to turn it off instead of leaving your grill on all night, man.
Correct.
So, again, good business for Diversified. Bad the next time you go to cook your meal.
Right.
Anyway, thanks for that, Kurt. And I'm glad we led off with propane. You guys see, you might think of just the normal day-to-day at your home applications, but it's really critical for business and industry out there. All right, guys. Next, we want to bring Lee McElrath in from Dominion. Lee's going to you guys remember what Bill Roberts did from Duke Energy last time. Lee is kind of going to do that here, give us a one-on-one. I've told him to go ahead and front load any of the kind of crazy conversions and numbers, just to warn you guys. If I don't get any questions from the audience here, we're going to start questioning you guys and see if you can do the calculations and arithmetic yourself. But Lee, with that said, take it away and show us a little one-on-one on natural gas for the next few minutes.
Great. Thank you, Ryan, and just thank you for the opportunity to be a part of this webinar today on behalf of Dominion Energy. And folks heard my bio. I'm an old PSNC Energy employee for a long time, and we've been part of Dominion Energy now since early 2019. And we are a very large company now, part of a very large organization, and economic development is a huge focus for us, and we want to help our partners in all the counties around North Carolina recruit those industries and grow those jobs. We'll go ahead and go into the next slide. One of the things we want to talk about here is we're talking about projects, and as a utility, and I know Piedmont's the same way, we want to be able to respond to your inquiries as quickly as possible. Usually, I know you guys love those one-day turnarounds that happen fairly often, or we hope you usually have more than a day. But one of the concerns that I know is always on these inquiries is there's always a value for gas that's on those inquiries. So many, and it can be in any kind of format. You know, and this little chart is something that we've used for years. It just gives a comparative value of the different fuels. And you know, doing this for the number of years that I've done it, I've gotten information from economic developers in all different formats. And I put this up here to say, I don't want you to worry about that, because we'll take whatever they send and we'll convert it into the format that we like to use, which you know, is BTUs or therms or decatherms of gas. You know, we like to look at that, or in cubic feet. So you know, we've gotten some very interesting numbers over the years, and sometimes I may call you, and Piedmont probably does the same thing, and say, this number doesn't make a lot of sense. We need to get some clarification because the factors may be a little off. So this gives you an idea of what we look at. You can go to the next slide. You know, of prime importance for being able to answer an inquiry quickly. What really helps us to know is these kinds of things: the flow rate for gas. This has to do with our system design. You know, the pipelines we have, they have a capacity that to flow a certain amount of gas, and when we know what those peak hourly flows might be, that helps us. The average hourly flow rate also is helpful, but knowing that peak hourly flow in whatever in cubic feet per hour, or you know, million BTUs, cubic meters per hour, you know, joules per hour, that's a really important number for us to know. Next slide. And then another real key that really helps us is knowing what pressure the customer might want on the outlet side of the meter. And you know, we have our pipeline pressure, which is much higher than what is normally utilized in a facility. That gas flows to our meter. The pressure is dropped to a much lower pressure to go to the equipment. Knowing what that pressure is going to be is very helpful for us in looking at our system and what we can supply. At Dominion, we offer some standard pressures, which is 7-inch water column. That's more of a residential pressure. 2-pound pressure and 5-pound pressure are usually used often in commercial applications and industrial applications. And we can offer greater pressure than that if the facility requires that for the equipment, but we have to run that through our engineering department for approval. Next slide. And I think I touched on this already, but we have you know, different average operating pressures in our pipelines. Our pressures are going to vary. One of the questions we see a lot from the information you'll send us from consultants will ask us about a pipeline capacity. And normally we won't answer that question directly, because it does vary depending on the weather conditions and other you know, customers that are on that line potentially. So it's not a one answer that you can give. And usually we'll give an answer that we may say it's adequate or more than adequate for the demand that your client's asking for. And we have also standard distribution pressures on our pipeline system are normally 55 pounds, and we have high pressure lines that are usually 150 psi or higher. And then we get to natural gas usage. We really would like to have an estimated average monthly usage and an annual usage. If we can have both, that's great. If we can get at least one, the annual usage, that'll help us in doing some preliminary economic analysis on those kind of projects. And here's just some questions we get. You know, how long will it take to provide service? And this is always, it's very dependent on the project, the size of the project, the complexity of the design of the project, how much pipe we need to put in the ground, and the permits. The regulatory environment that we operate in today is much different than it was years ago, and as a result, it takes a lot longer to get projects completed. And I think I already hit on this capacity of the pipeline question. So anyway, Ryan, we can.
Nice, Lee. Thanks for that. I loved hearing you say, answering the question, we can be more than adequate in serving that client. That's what everybody wants to hear. In responding
Exactly.
to that RFI. Lee, that was perfect right there, and we're right on time. Some of your FAQ right there is a nice segue into really our panel discussion, and that's what we'll do right here, guys. And like I mentioned earlier, just we're going to bounce some questions around to the panelists. For some of those questions, we'll have some graphics that we can sprinkle in there to help complement what our panelists are describing to you. But you can kind of get a sense, if it wasn't clear from the beginning, some pretty clear goals here is to really help bridge that kind of understanding gap between utilities and local practitioners, so we can all be better in the game when it comes to responding to RFIs or developing more product. And we've already gotten a good start on that. So let's jump into the panel discussion right here. And we're going to turn this first one over to Jason. And let's kind of keep it with basics for a little bit longer. Where's the gas coming from? And maybe what are some of those key cost drivers that we know we've historically had some low gas prices here, but jump in on that, Jason, and help us understand that a little bit better.
Hey, thanks, Ryan, and appreciate you having me here. It's good to be in front of everybody today. There's a graph here that shows the UDES pipeline grid. The United States has about 2 million miles of natural gas distribution lines, which is going to be your lower pressure lines that you would see in a street to a neighborhood or so forth. About 321,000 miles of high pressure transmission lines, which those are the ones that are typically interstate and intrastate and carry the bulk of the gas. About 114 active liquefied natural gas facilities as well. So these liquefied natural gas or LNG facilities, what they do is they take the gas and they cool it to about negative 260 degrees Fahrenheit. That liquefies the natural gas. It allows it for, allows more efficient storage as a liquid within our large tanks. That's used primarily during periods of peak demand, cold weather mostly. And once that's stored, the gas can be warmed and vaporized and injected directly into the transmission pipelines. So if you'll notice, we have, if you look through North Carolina, we have one primary pipeline which serves North Carolina, and it runs from southeastern Texas in the Gulf, where the gas is gathered from the wells on the land and the offshore drilling platforms. That pipeline goes all the way up to New York City. It's 1,800 miles, and it's called Transco, if you've heard of it. It's serves owned by Williams Natural Gas. Compressor stations are placed along the pipeline about every 40 to 100 mile intervals to keep the gas flowing, and Transco has a capacity of about 17 million decatherms per day.
Hey, Jason, I just wanted to jump in, and before you zoom in on Transco, just looking at this larger map right here, I look at North Carolina and you can't help but not be concerned, especially if you're in, almost 2/3 of the state. It's looking pretty bleak there in terms of infrastructure. But we all know you got the choir here on what's happened with the Atlantic Coast Pipeline and how important that was to North Carolina. But that's a pretty blank map for our state right there.
Yes, it's we've been heavily reliant on Transco for years and years and years, and I think that as time goes on, obviously we're very disappointed about the Atlantic Coast Pipeline. Several good reasons for not doing it, though, and that's just what happened, unfortunately. But Piedmont is always looking at other options to expand our system out into eastern North Carolina. And we are currently looking at those options in lieu of Atlantic Coast Pipeline. All of those have not been designed yet or announced yet, but we anticipate hopefully by the second quarter of 21, we'll have some pretty big announcements possibly to expand our system eastward. Because we recognize that eastern North Carolina is quite sparse as far as natural gas availability. So that's definitely a concern of ours. So, you know, you asked about the cost drivers for the commodity of natural gas, and natural gas is basically, it's heavily dependent on basic economics, supply and demand. When supply goes up, the price goes down typically, or at least has downward pressure on it. And when supplies are short, which can be caused by unforeseen circumstances, sometimes hurricanes. We don't like to talk about those, but then when the supply goes down and the wellheads start closing up or get damaged, then the price can obviously go up. System demands drive supply, since the higher demands tend to create more wellheads and supply, and vice versa. Gas prices can be volatile, and I wish I knew what they were going to do from one day to the next, because I'd be sitting on a beach somewhere. But most large customers purchase the commodity from their marketers, and the local distribution companies like Piedmont and Dominion are paid to transport the gas from the city gates, from our city gates to the customer under their transportation rates. Piedmont also offers all-inclusive sales rates, where the customer can buy the commodity of the gas from Piedmont and also the transportation as kind of a bundled service. But one thing to keep in mind, and this surprises a lot of people, is that local distribution companies like Piedmont, we don't make money on the commodity of the gas. We make money on the transportation. So we're kind of like UPS or the FedEx of natural gas, and we don't profit from what's actually in the box. So that tends to take some people by surprise. So I always like to get that out there.
Learn something new every day. Nice.
All right, go to the next slide, please. Okay, so these are the United States shale gas plays, and basically where these are located, we've got the Marcellus Shale and the Utica Shale basins up in northeastern United States. So a shale play is a geographic area where it contains organic, rich, fine-grained sedimentary rock, silt, clay, when it has a lot of deposits of natural gas and oil. It's rich in those deposits. So the extraction of natural gas through hydraulic fracturing, or what's known as fracking, which probably everybody's heard of, and the technology of the horizontal drilling, which is used in fracking to collect larger quantities of gas, where they can go down and then actually turn and go horizontally to collect more, which is fairly new technology. That's allowed the gas to be collected from a lot of previously unattainable sources in several of these shale plays. Our country's natural gas resource base is very enormous, benefits the economy, environment, and our energy security. So this slide here just shows the plays there, and the key ones that we look at in North Carolina are the Marcellus and Utica shale basins up there in the northeast, which is kind of in the upper right corner in that dark burgundy colors. So we'll go to the next slide. So this is the Transco interstate pipeline, which I spoke about earlier, just as a closer view as it applies to North Carolina. So it enters North Carolina down in Gaston County, travels northeast, and exits up in Rockingham County. So all of the local distribution companies like Piedmont and Dominion, as well as like municipal gas systems, they take gas off of this pipeline through the city gate stations, like I mentioned before, and then other pipelines that also tie into Transco, like the 24-inch Cardinal pipeline, which is in the top right side of the map there, I believe. It comes off the top of Transco near where it exits North Carolina and runs southeast. So that's the Cardinal pipeline, and that runs from Rockingham County down to Raleigh.
Yeah.
All right.
And Jason, before my next question is going to go to Jazz, but and maybe this can kind of be a bridge, but I mean, I look at this and what you describe, and you know, we talk about national security issues. What about state security issues? Given that this is really the kind of the big boy. I mean, if something happened to that, then you know, we would not be in a good position with natural gas supply. Is that right?
Well, that's true. That's so far we haven't had any real major issues with that. There will be some. You know, Transco can reverse flow from time to time if they have to. So that's one advantage, you know, that we have. And there's plenty of gas up in the shale regions right now. And typically when they reverse flow and go north to south, if they had to, then that gas coming from the shale basins is very rich. So it may have to be diluted some, but they still have some options there. And then as we get more pipelines, you know, such as the Mountain Valley pipeline tying into Transco, we get a little more diversity there as well to help us out in North Carolina.
Now that's helpful commentary right there. And if I hadn't pointed out to the audience yet, I'm trying to draw connections with the vast majority of our speakers today are based in Western North Carolina. If you heard it, I know Kurt coming from Boone, Jason right there based out of Hickory, Lee's and Asheville. Of course, the L2 NCEDA crowd coming out of Brevard. So if it wasn't for me and Jazz here, I don't know if the rest of the state would have anything to say here today. But Jazz and I are in Raleigh. Jazz, the next question's for you, man. And it might sound a little obvious, but you know, why gas is so important for business and industry, and maybe even spend more time on what are the types of operations that we see having the most critical needs for gas. I mean, we might guess food processing and you know, plastics, but kind of talk us through some of that, man.
Be happy to. Good afternoon, Ryan, and thank you so much for the question. Like most gas guys, I could spend all day addressing this one, but in the interest of time, I'll give you the short version. There are many reasons why natural gas is important for businesses and industry, mainly because natural gas is a key input in many industrial processes. Factories and pressing plants use natural gas for a wide array of industrial purposes. For example, as products flow along assembly lines, natural gas powers the conveyor belts that move each item from one stage of production to the next. Natural gas also runs the heaters, coolers, and air purifiers that ensure quality air in factory settings. Overall, industry is the largest consumer of natural gas, accounting for 43% of natural gas use across all sectors. Notably, natural gas is the second most used energy source in energy and industry, trailing only electricity. Furthermore, in addition to its clean burning properties, natural gas prices tend to be cheaper for some large volume consumers when compared to competing fuel sources. The types of operations that have the most critical need for natural gas include pulp and paper mills, petroleum refining, metals preheating, particularly for iron and steel, glass melting, plastics, and as you alluded to earlier, Brian, food processing industries. In closing, natural gas is important for business and industry because it's the best value and best all-around energy choice. I'm a little biased there, but especially when you factor in the financial and environmental benefits of natural gas, it's the most superior option.
There we go. Jazz, thanks for that color right there. And maybe turn to Kurt here on, I know we've had some questions come in, and thanks for the audience on that. I guess they're responding to that earlier threat that I lobbied out there. But Kurt, how so when natural gas is not available, or not economically feasible to reach a particular industrial site, how is propane a viable alternative? And at what point does a site or a community really kind of become non-competitive? I know that is kind of going to be project specific, but maybe just talk a little bit on that issue if you could.
Okay. In my presentation, I alluded to some of the comparisons to the two fuels, how they are interchangeable with some equipment modification. Pricing has behaved. Once again, it's commodity based. Also, propane's behaved quite well the last 2 or 3 years, really as a result of the fracking process, and there's an abundance of propane hitting the market. And although we're still a higher priced product overall than natural gas, it has become quite a bit more competitive, as I mentioned, in the last 3 to 5 years. I do look at it as a bridge. It's not that too complex for us to go in and design, a storage bulk system or a plant for a factory or industrial site. And it can be done in a relatively short period of time. And most of the operational aspects that Jazz mentioned, we can perform the same types of performance as far as energy supply.
Nice. That's helpful right there, Kurt. I appreciate that. Maybe jump back a little bit more technical and get back to Lee here and talk about again some questions coming in before the panel. The difference between firm and interruptible service. What type of customers would be on those different services? Maybe just a real basic explanation of units and measurements. But Lee, maybe you could help us out on that one, man.
Sure, I'll be glad to. Firm and interruptible. I mean, the words are pretty explanatory. Firm service is service where the utility, us or Piedmont, would offer gas with with no interruptions other than those that may occur due to force majeure. Interruptible service is a customer that desires that kind of service usually has a backup fuel system, and in return for having that backup fuel system, they usually are charged a smaller rate to deliver the gas to them. Or if it's a sales rate, it's still going to be less than a firm service rate. So the customers that'll do that are usually our larger users that those differences in cost between firm and interruptible service, which aren't large, but for a real large user, it amounts to a lot of money. So we find that these days we don't have a lot of customers that request interruptible service because the natural gas is, the price of natural gas has come down so much that and then the regulatory environment to maintain alternate fuel systems, sometimes they don't want to keep up with those systems. They tend to choose firm service more often, but interruptible service is certainly available. There are some cases where if the facility is large enough and located in areas on our system where there could be some challenges in the dead of winter when it's extremely cold, we may ask a customer to be on interruptible service. But I've not seen that happen in a long time. So
Yeah.
We have pretty robust pipeline systems now. I know Piedmont does as well.
Nice. Lee, thanks for that. I'm going to go back to Jazz here, and Jason, we'll get back to you as well with the next question. But if you could, and we may have a visual on this, but how can I find out who serves the property? We asked this with our Electric 101 panel, and I know we had promised attendees kind of a master spreadsheet of contacts across all utilities. What we've discovered is it might be best just to compile a booklet, and you can flip through the pages of when you need to find your gas person, here's their map. And Jazz, just talk to us real quick. Who serves the property out there? How can local developers find that out?
Sure, Ryan, I'd be happy to. In North Carolina, natural gas is delivered to customers by 5 local distribution companies and 8 municipal systems. The LDCs, such as Dominion and Piedmont, have defined franchise service territories throughout the state. The LDCs are regulated by the North Carolina Utilities Commission, which sets their rates in terms of service. With respect to Piedmont, we serve approximately 2/3 of the state. In the map you have before you outlining Piedmont service territory, you'll note the contact information for the 8 gas major accounts managers assigned to each respective geographical area across the state. These managers work with Jason and I, and they serve as your primary points of contact for customers seeking to establish natural gas service with Piedmont.
Nice. It's a nice colorful map right there. And again, a promise to NCEDA members. We're going to compile all these once we wrap up the 101 series, and you'll have that on the NCEDA resource webpage. So Jazz, thanks for that. I'm going to get back to Jason here. And Jason, what are important considerations for gas infrastructure when identifying new industrial sites? And Lee may want to chime in after you, but it's kind of some related questions that I'd put under that umbrella is really, are there advantages of having a compressing station nearby? Are bigger lines better in every case? So maybe if you could talk on that for a minute.
Sure. I put this slide up here, and in a nutshell, if there's a gas line in front of a piece of property, that doesn't always mean that the service is available. Now, we can make service available. We always want to look at that, and for obvious reasons, we always are wanting to work with you and our prospects and customers to make service available is anytime it's economically feasible. We are regulated by the Utilities Commission, as Jazz said, so we do have to have projects that pay for themselves, and we can't have, because if we don't, then our other ratepayers are subsidizing those projects. So we have to be a little careful, but we always want to look at expanding our territory and expanding into other areas and serving our customers, obviously, and new ones as well. So, this slide basically says that if there is a gas line located at a piece of property, it could be fully subscribed, meaning it doesn't have the capacity that's available for the connected load. They're all going to have a little bit of capacity available typically because of emergencies, and we have some redundancy there. But for the types of large loads that industrial customers have, sometimes we don't have the capacity. But we can go upstream and do looping and some other projects or tie in to other systems and backfeed. So sometimes there's several options there to boost the capacity of the line that's actually in front of the property. And then on the other flip side of that too, just like I was kind of explaining, if there's not a gas line at a piece of property, that doesn't mean that we can't put one there. So we always want to work with all of our economic developers and our prospects to try to get a gas line to a piece of property if at all possible. To serve what their needs are. And, I believe we talked about this a little bit earlier, but I think some of the most important things that we need to know to determine our cost are going to be the connected load and the delivery pressure. And then to determine our revenue, we need to know the monthly usage and, kind of an idea of what rate they're going to be on, whether they're going to be interruptible or firm, because we design our system for firm customers. Interruptible customers can take the other capacity that's available. And so there's a lot of variables involved. And the best thing to do is to get in touch with your local distribution company or your municipal gas provider. If it's, you're in a municipal area like Lexington, North Carolina, something like that. And then depending on the location of the site, just provide all of that information to them. And let them determine what's gonna be needed to serve that load at that site. Compressor stations you asked about, larger lines, they're great, and they are always have more capacity. With the compressor station nearby on a large line, obviously you're going to have more capacity. But again, going back to what I said earlier, it could be fully subscribed. So we always want to kind of caveat that with it's not necessarily indicative of what capacity is on that actual line. So.
That's really helpful, Jason. And seeing we're at 2:46 right now, I think the next handful of questions we might go into rapid fire mode, but we're doing well on time and the questions that we have here. And these next few, we probably can get through pretty quick. Lee, first to you, and I kind of got an idea what the answer might be, but we've seen, what's the lead time installation of connecting pipes to a site when gas is needed? Is it safe to assume it all depends, right?
Well, it does, and I want to say what Jason described very well. The process there, and you don't necessarily have a gas line in front of a property to necessarily mean that it's got the capacities. Example, there was a large project this week that the economic developers on the call are very aware of that had such a load that we had a number of sites that they may have had a line in front of it, but that line was not adequate. So we had to look at our engineering, our system, and have our engineers look at it to look at where we could access enough gas for those for that load. So that's an example of what Jason was talking about. Projects, every project is different, and the dynamics of the thing we've noticed more so than anything is permitting, environmental permitting, the railroad. If we have to cross a railroad, that's always fun and exciting for us in the utility industry. And I'm kidding. It's a very tedious process and takes time. So there's lots of things that affect how long it takes to get a project in the ground. But as I think all the economic developers know, we will do everything we can to meet a timeline for a client.
Nice. Yeah, that's helpful. And really, Kurt, same to you. You might have a more definitive answer on this. What's the typical construction timeline for a really large on-site propane installation? I mean, we've seen those huge tanks out there. Right. Permitting not quite as steep, maybe a little more certainty on that kind of project.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's relatively short, really. In most cases, we actually have inventories of all the different tank sizes I had mentioned earlier, the large variety. Generally, a month or two, probably in the summertime.
Okay.
Wintertime tends to be a busier and a more complicated process for us, but.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's helpful. And again, to your point on propane often being a bridge to help in that type of resource. I might skip over a couple of questions right here, guys, just seeing where we're at. A couple of these, we had a question come in on what resources should we look to in comparing cost and accessibility between states. I know sometimes that comes out in the marketing materials that we like to develop and seeing how competitive is North Carolina. We might answer that one offline, but I just wanted to recognize the folks that are submitting some questions here. And maybe some quick speculation, guys, on how is any way to guess on historically low gas prices and can they continue? Any way to answer that? And maybe we'll go to Lee on that one.
Oh, great. Thanks a lot. Low gas prices. We are in a situation in the United States, as you all are aware of, is that we have gone from being an importer of energy to such a large supply of energy, that's oil, propane, natural gas, that we are actually exporting. So we have a tremendous capability to bring natural gas and all these energy sources to the market. So you know, who knows what'll happen with prices.
Right.
But,
Right.
supply and demand dictates that. Right now, we've been in a historically low market for
Mhm.
pricing. And, I think that will likely continue for a little while.
Nice. That's good to hear right there. I think we got one more visual for our audience here, and this is going to go back to Jason and on the subject of resiliency. So, we know it, guys. Hurricanes or other bad storms, resiliency's become an increasingly important topic. How resilient is gas infrastructure? We talked about it on the electrical side of the house, but what can you speak to that to, Jason? I think you got a graphic coming up right there. It is.
Yeah, so, hurricanes in the Gulf, I mentioned earlier, can always damage the wellheads and drilling platforms, which can restrict supply. That's a pretty rare occurrence. We had Katrina and some other issues where, not surprisingly, prices went up during those times. And I spoke to earlier about the interstate pipelines being able to reverse flow, some of them, to obtain gas from the shale regions instead in order to maintain those capacities. Our gas control department is based out of our Piedmont Town Center down in Charlotte. They monitor system pressures, flows, temperatures, everything about our system 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. They have a lot of sophisticated monitoring equipment. They have a big control room with TVs everywhere showing every part of our system. So if there's a pressure drop on our system, we will know about it almost immediately. Then we of course have people on call all the time so we can take action to fix the problem. And we design our system to serve our firm customers reliably, no matter what the weather. And then we also have the ability to curtail our interruptible customers if we have to maintain system pressures. Of course, we never like doing that, but with our infrastructure being underground, that really helps a lot from damages, and it makes us, we like to say the CARE acronym: comfortable, affordable, reliable, and efficient. So that's where your reliability comes in.
Nice. That's a heck of a picture on the left right there. I mean, we know what the one on the right is, but seeing that kind of ice is something else. Let's go right here. We got time for a few more questions, and I am promising the audience we've got a few coming in. We're going to get to as much of those as we can. Let's see here. Going back to Jazz. Time winding down here. Maybe if you could point to some bright spots or lessons learned in recent years, and we know there's been some unique and memorable projects and challenges, but and maybe even to the point on successes and progress made in partnering with local economic developers. I know that's a bit of a potpourri right there,
Yeah.
Jazz, but give us some commentary on that, man.
I'd be happy to, Ryan. Thanks so much. There are so many bright spots and lessons learned in recent years. Most recently, we had a great experience partnering with the economic development stakeholders in an effort to bring an auto plant to the Greensboro Randolph megasite. We also enjoyed great success in the advocacy work associated with the Atlantic Coast Pipeline Project, as we mentioned earlier. Piedmont has 5 states in its service territory, and I would say the economic development ecosystem in North Carolina is probably a cut above all of them. We are the very best in terms of the level of professionalism, the tenacity, and the passion that the NCDEDA and its members bring to their work. Most of the challenges we found typically emerge when we're asked to respond to a highly complex customer request with limited information and a short-term turnaround time. Usually those requests come in and you guys need them yesterday. And we're agile and we're responsive, but sometimes it makes it very difficult for us to provide an adequate response with limited time and limited information. So if you don't take anything else away from this discussion, I would encourage everyone in the webinar to involve the gas companies in your projects as early as possible when you are engaging with the prospect. We're accustomed to working under code names for highly confidential projects, so that is not an issue. In addition, as was alluded to earlier, we would encourage you to never assume that, because there's a pipeline in front of the property that we can serve it, or conversely, never assume that because we don't have infrastructure nearby that we can't serve a property, because we're always looking to expand our system to respond to customer needs and expand our footprint. After all, LDCs are ultimately infrastructure companies, and it's our goal to put as much plant and facilities in the ground and earn a return on those investments and hopefully end up with additional satisfied customers. That's it for me, Ryan.
Oh, Jazz,
Amen.
I was about to say, I mean, for a second there, when you start talking about the tenacity and professionalism of North Carolina economic developers, I think the hair stood up on the back of my neck, man. That was that's good stuff, man. We need that kind of spirit going into the holiday season, and the way this year's been, man. What are we at? 256, 257, a few more minutes to go. I think I've heard all of you, and I'm looking at the attendee list of the folks on the call. That big project that came through last week that everyone's familiar with, you don't even have to call the name out, but when you look at the requirements on that, I mean, the nature of a project like that, it seems like kind of the site selection process for we as a state of North Carolina, you would almost start with the gas requirement and kind of start your process of elimination there. How, guys, and I'd ask this for whoever wants to step in and answer it, but when we see a big project like that come through with that kind of requirement, how quickly whittled down is our list of competitive sites with that kind of gas load? And I'll leave that for anybody that wants to step up and try to answer it. Or I'll call you out.
Ryan, this is Lee. I spent a good deal of time with that project this week, and it gets you excited. We like to sell gas. That's what we do. So when we see a loads like that, we did have some questions about delivery pressure, which we got clarified, and thanks to the EDP&C, they did a great job in getting back with us quickly to get that clarified. But we'll work, as Jazz referred to, we'll look at sites, and some of the sites may have had a pipeline in front of them that wasn't adequate, but we'll go find one that is. And and I know at Dominion, our engineering group responded very quickly in helping us out to get this data together. And it's that's not easy on a large project like that. It's very challenging.
Yeah, that's perfect. And I see we're almost out of time. Great to hear that compliment to the team at EDP&C. I know they always do their best to be responsive and not be the bottleneck. And what's often, just like Jazz said, they wanted the information yesterday. It's tough on everybody. With the last minute here, guys, I'm going to promise the folks that put in a question that we may not have gotten to, Robin, Andy, Ernie Pearson, a handful of questions. We will answer those offline. Liz will capture our panelist responses and get those to you folks. I do need to have a few closing remarks right here. Of course, thank all these gentlemen today for their useful knowledge. Great questions from the audience too. Thanks for really being engaged in this virtual format. There's obviously much more that we can learn on the topic, and I hope you'll consider our panelists today as resources you can call on when specific opportunities come up. Most of you know that. And you can also explore the resource section on NCEDA's website for additional guidance. We hope everybody found this beneficial. Our thanks again to NCEDA's annual sponsors for their support, professional development programs throughout the year, especially during this challenging year. The Professional Development Committee is working hard to organize additional webinar offerings for 2021. Watch your emails and your biweekly e-newsletter for information on those upcoming offerings. In the meantime, best wishes, guys. Happy holidays. And you know it's, please stay safe. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.